Now we will start with the next chapter, 𝐻𝐿 𝐴𝐚𝐚 𝐏𝐻𝐵. Now that's a very interesting issue. The previous chapter was about the preparation for the surgery. That's the aglobaharaniya. The next chapter is about yantra and the shastra, which is related to the actual surgical condition. Now in between that 𝐻𝐿 is looks odd from a general common point of view, but the important is where a person who wishes to have a career in surgery, he has to be physically fit, and keeping that fitness as the primary issue and quite important issue. So Dhanvantari refers to that Rijaya in between. Once you have prepared for the surgery, before you go into the real field of action, you have to be fit as such. And that fitness is a very essential component of the surgical career. So usually I would say, like those who have a breathlessness when they climb to second floor during the rounds, they need to improve your fitness. That's the issue. Now, the Ruchacharya it starts with the definition of Kala. Kala or the time. Kalo hinama bhagavan स्वयंभूः अनादिमध्यनिधनः अत्र रसव्यापत् सम्पत्ति जीवितमरणे च मनुष्याणाम् आयते स सूक्ष्मामपि कलां न लीयते इति कालः संकलयति कारयति वा भूतानि इति कालः. Now kala or the time, that's a very important issue. The definition of time in Indian philosophy. Now when I say Indian philosophy, there is no difference between science and philosophy from the point of view. Darshana, the word darshana of Indian philosophy, it is really the science, basic science. Now all these issues these statements have some relevance when you go further into the discussion part. So a scientific description or definition of the kala or the time according to the Indian philosophy or as a darshanas. It's not only about Sushruta. These are the statements are common for every other Indian science asset. Now, kala is a factor which produces a change, and it also is a cause for the destruction as well as the creation. So, a change in the sense like, see, the whole the creation of the world has occurred from a situation where there was a purely energy, and then the energy it started into a mass conversion. Molecules or atoms, they started merging together, and that resulted in a bigger molecule, and then of course the whole body was created. And then there is a cycle of decomposition that gets broken down, and then again the atoms again they get dispersed, energy is again separated. So the whole universe is a mass of energy and the mass as such. Now this continuous process can occur due to a factor which gives that scope, that time factor, and that factor is called as a kala, and hence the word kala is also applied to Mahakala or the Rudra, who is the god for the destruction. Yama, the death, also is named as kala. So that word kala has a very broader meaning, and it gives that a comprehensive idea of the importance of what we call as the time. When the time started, no one can answer. The time started before when the universe was created. That creation of the universe itself is a time. Whenever there is a possibility of change, that itself is a time, and hence the kala is considered as anadi, and it doesn't end. It cannot end because you cannot expect that world to end as such. You may have the destruction of the physical world, the physical visible world may be destroyed, but still there is always a scope for reconstruction, and hence it's a anidhana. There will be no end to the kala as such. So hence kala is also named as Bhagavan. It's equated to the god. तस्य संवत्सरात्मनो भगवान् आदित्यः गतिविशेषेण अक्षि निमेष काष्ठ कला मुहूर्त अहोरात्र पक्ष मास ऋतु अयन संवत्सर युग प्रविभागम करोति. Now sun is considered as the main factor decisive about assessing the kala. This kala Bhagavan, which is a anadinidana, which is a continuous process, to make it perceptible you refer it to the sun. Now there is another issue, Aditya Gati Visheshana, whether the sun moves or the earth moves. We will come to that part also later, the detail. a version of Indian philosophy. Now, anyway, based upon the movement of the sun as we see, and in relation to what we see in this universe, it's divided into Akshini measure, seconds, Kastha, Kala, the measures of time in those periods, Muhurta, Ahoratra, Paksha, Masa, Rutu, Ayana. It's as we say, seconds, minutes, hours, and so on. Similarly, the time period was measured as such. Now, Kala also is considered as a Karana Dravya. Now, Dravya, according to Darshana Shastra, is anything which has a Guna and Karma. Guna Karma, Samavai, wherever there is a Guna and Karma together, that's called as Dravya. So, Dravya is not translated, should not be translated as a material. Now, the Guna of Kala are Sankhya, Parimiti, Prutatva, Sanyoga, Vibhaga. It gives a scope for counting, like counting number of hours, number of days, and so on. It gives a scope for assessing the duration, parimiti, a gap. Pruthatvam, it can separate from one to the other, like past and present and the future, that can be separated. Sanyoga and Vibhaga. You can have some ideas brought down from the past and then it can be merged together. The information can be developed further. That's Sanyoga. And Vibhaga is you can have a feeling of separations that classify the incidents of the past, present, and so on. So that definition of Kala is a very unique and very scientific description present in Indian philosophy. Janyanam janaka kalaha jagatam ashrayamatah paraparatudhi hetuhu shanadisyat upaditah. So when the paraparatudhi hetuhu, these are the gunas of Kala, yatrashitaha karma gunaha karanam samavayat dravyam, and because the guna and the karma are located, it's called as the dravya, karana dravya as such. Now, the present science, the current science, it has a very awkward situation when it comes to the question of defining the time. The definition of time accepted by the physicists is a progression of events from the past to the present into the future. So, if basically a system is unchanging, it is timeless. So, it is almost a copy of what the Indian philosophy says, but I would say a poor copy. A indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future is regarded as a whole is the definition in the dictionary. The physics definition and the linguistic definition, they are two different issues. When the linguistic definition of the time, it says about only the continuity, whereas the change is a factor considered in the physics. Now, the very popularly and very usually considered to be a major breakthrough in the science is the Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein's theory of relativity is exactly the definition of the Kala as mentioned in our ancient texts. So, theory of general relativity says that the observation of gravitational effect between the mass results from warping of the space-time. There is a continuous exchange between the mass and the energy, and of course, only the addition by Newton is about that c square, E is equal to mc square. So that's the issue. Now that E is equal to mc square is the exactly what the cycle of the life or cycle of the life mentioned in our philosophy. That's birth, then the death, then again life, and at times there is a escape to the moksha. So that theory of general relativity is really the theory of what we have in our philosophy as that's why I say the philosophy and the science are not different. Now the definition of those time intervals, laghu akshara uchcharana matva akshinimesha. Akshinimesha is the time taken for pronouncing a single light monotone word. So laghu akshara, like that's the time definition. Now we use the time definition of seconds. Now second, minute, and hour. The definition of those in the present day situation is based upon the time taken by a pendulum moving around in a museum in England. And based upon that, there is a standard length and the standard temperature. A standard pendulum maintained in a museum there, and that is a criteria to say which is the minute. And then, of course, you have standardized that. Now, from Ayurvedic, it is Indian philosophy point of view, you do not have that kind of a extraneous standard. The standard is within yourselves, and that's about the time taken for Laghacha Ucharana Matraha Akshinimesha, time taken for pronouncing a single letter, and Panchadash Akshinimesha Kastaha, 15 of that is Kasta, Trimshat Kastaha Kalaha, 30 Kastas are Kala, and Vimshati Kalaha Muhurtaha. The 20 kalas is the muhurta. Muhurta is somewhat equivalent to 2 hours and 15 minutes, something around that. 75 minutes is somewhat the equivalent, not exactly. And kala dashabhagascha trimshat muhurtam ahoratram and panchadasha ahoratrani paksham. So when there are 30 muhurtas, that's called as ahoratra, and panchadasha ahoratrani pakshaha, 15 of the days is paksha, and such a dvividaha shuklaha krishnascha. The pakshas are of two categories, Shukla and Krishna. Now, that Shukla and Krishna category of the differentiation would be based upon the lunar movement. The method of measuring the time in Indian philosophy was based upon two celestial bodies. One is the sun and the other is the moon. And when it is followed by measured by sun, it's called a solar system. Then the moon, because it's much easier, it's to assess the lunar system is present, also used in that, and the Shukla and Krishna Paksha is based upon the lunar assessment. Now, Tatra Maghadeya Dwadasha Masaha, the year is divided into 12 months, and Vimasikam Rutum Kutva Shadrutavo Bhavanti. 2 months are considered as a Rutu, and Jateja Shishira Vasanta Grishma Varsha Sharad Hemantaha. The 6 Rutus mentioned in Sushruta are Shishira, Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, and Hemantaha. Tatra tapastapasyo Shishiraha, Madhu Madhu Vasantaha, Shuchi Shukro Grishmaha, Nabho Nabastyo Varshaha, Yisho Gorjo Sharat, Saha Sahasyo Hemantaha. The 2 sets of the 2 months as such. Tayetesti Shitoshna Varsha Lakshanaha, Chandradityoho Kal Vibhagakartvad Ayane Ve Bhavataha Dakshinam Uttaramta. Now, these Shadrutus, they are categorized based upon the environmental conditions, temperature, particularly the temperature, cold and warm seasons, and so virtually the Rutus are the seasons as such. And of course, the word Rutu is applied in the physiology of the Ayurveda in many other contexts too. The cycle, physiological cycle in the woman's body also is called as Rutu. So that's another issue. That as far as the nature is concerned, the Rutu is about the changing season as such. And they are again categorized into 2 ayanas. And the 2 ayanas, that again word ayana suggests about a movement. Now, movement of whom? That's a point which we will try to deal with. Very popularly it's said that it's the movement of the sun, but it's not really the movement of the sun. It's about the movement of the earth, and that movement of the earth in relation to the sun is the ayana. Tayoho Dakshinam Varsha Sharad Hemantaha. The Dakshina Ayana is the Varsha Sharad Hemanta. Tesha Bhagavan Apyayate Somaha. During that season, it's relatively cold, and hence the humid contents of the environment will be more. Amla Lavana Madhurascha Rasaha Balavanto Bhavanti. Uttarottaram Sarvapranyanam Balam Abhivardhate. The strength, the physical strength of the animals, living bodies in the world would be increased during that period. It will facilitate the anabolic activity. Uttaram ja Shishira Vasanta Grishmaha, Tesha Bhagavan Apyayate Arkaha, Tikta Kashaya Katukascha Rasaha Balavanto Bhavanti, Uttarotram ja Sarvapranyanam Balam Upahiyate. In the Uttarayana, the Shishira Vasanta Grishma Rutu is the prominence of the sun, and hence you will have a relatively lesser anabolic activity. It's more of catabolic activity. There is a cycle of anabolic and catabolic activity balancing in the body, and this is in relation to the seasons and the environment. This is the unique concept of the Rutu and the relation of the body. Contemporary physiology doesn't recognize these changes. Though it doesn't recognize these changes, the impacts cannot be denied as such. Shitam Shukledayatyurivim Vivaswan Shoshayatyapi Tahu Ubhavapi Samshatya Vayu Palayati Prajaha. The whole balance of the temperature, the universe is maintained by a balance of these anabolic and catabolic changes in the universe. It's not only about the body. There is a cycle of catabolism and anabolism that again represents the same conversion of energy to the mass and mass to the energy. When the energy is converted to the mass, that's the anabolic. When the mass is converted to the energy, it's the catabolic activity. These are regulated by another factor, the Vayu, the constant in Einstein's formula, E is equal to mc square. That c square is the Vayu, and E and m, the energy and the mass. चित्रं देवानां उदगात् अनेकं चक्षुर्मित्रस्य वरुणस्य अग्नेः आप्या द्यावा पृथिवी अंतरिक्षं सूर्य आत्मा जगतस्थस्तुश्च. This is from the Rigveda. Now this idea, this concept of the Surya, sun being the center of all the activities of the universe, is a unique concept starting from Rigveda, from the time immemorial. To say the time of Rigveda is not possible. Now, the issue of whether Surya moves or the earth moves. If you read Varahamihira in 507 AD, which is the time of period of 507 AD is given by the contemporary historians, Varahamihira and Aryabhata, the two of the astronomists of India, reputed astronomists of India. Varahamihira has written Surya Siddhanta, whereas Aryabhata is Aryabhatiya. They are very much similar, and Varahamihira has given a diagrammatic description of the whole of the universe, where sun is considered as the center, earth moving around. So heliocentric and astronomy is a original contribution of Indian Darshana Shastra. It's not Ayurveda. Indian Darshana Shastra has established that. And Varahamihira gives a very beautiful description, like when you are moving in a moving boat, we are looking at the shore of the sea or shore of the river. Now, when the boat is moving faster, you feel that it is the shore which moves, objects on the shore which move around, and you feel that the boat is in a steady position. Of course, you may have experienced the same thing in any of the moving vehicles. Maybe faster the vehicle, that kind of a notion is always faster. When you are constant, when you fly through an aeroplane, you will feel that the aeroplane is steady, but the surrounding areas are moving around. So that kind of a notion is felt. And if at all you have to observe a vaster area, it should be always by considering a moving vehicle as a constant, and in relation to that moving vehicle, you will be observing the surrounding area. And hence, all the theories of astronomy which are mentioned in the Indian Jyotisha Shastra, Indian Jyotisha as such, and particularly again there you have the two components, Ganita and Tapala in the Ganita Bhaga, that whatever is mentioned is based upon that kind of a notion where though you are in a moving object of the earth, you will be studying this in relation to the surroundings so that you can have a vaster description. Now, it's a very common sense. If you are in a moving vehicle and then observe the surroundings, you can observe a larger area. If you are steady on the ground and you are observing the moving vehicle, you will have a very short duration to observe the moving vehicle. You cannot observe it for a longer duration. So, if you have to observe for a longer duration, it has to be on the moving vehicle, and you can examine or observe the vaster area. And hence, based upon that, the whole of the astronomy, Indian astronomy, is built up. So, if at all there is a credit to go to the establishment of a heliocentric universe, it should go to Indian philosophy. Starts from Rigveda. Varahamihira has given a very beautiful and very constructive, structured description of the same. But if you look at the history as studied now, and even if you have, when you have studied in elementary school, Nicholas Copernicus is given the credit of establishing this theory of heliocentric universe. And of course, there is a story that he was punished for that, and because the church believed in geocentric universe. So that controversy issue, I think we should be vocal about the contributions of Indian philosophy, though we may not change the history as recorded by the Western interests. That's the one part. Now, तत्र खलु अयने द्वे युगपत् संवत्सरो भवति ते तु पञ्चयुगमिति संज्ञां लभन्ते त एष निमेषादियुगपर्यन्तः कालः चक्रवत् परिवर्तमानः कालचक्रम् इत्युच्यते इत्येके. Another very important character of the kala is it has a cyclical fashion. It just rotates. Now, see, you have the cyclical fashion is in every sector. You start with the day and night, it repeats every time. Year, it repeats every time. Of course, seasons, rainy season, every year it comes in and then you have that. So similarly, infinitely, there is a chakra or a cyclical movement. And that cyclical movement or cyclical version of the time is the basics of, or simply is established and it's a practiced in India from a longer duration. A proof of that, a visible structured proof of that is the sculpture at Sun Temple in Konark, where the Kala Chakra is depicted in the form of a beautiful sculpture, and it's the interest of lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people who visit over that. Or the Kala Chakra Mandala is also a method of worship in the Tibetan Buddhas. And in McLeodganj Dharmashala temple, you have that Kala Chakra, which also represents the same cyclical activity. Interestingly, the very famous theory of Stephen Hawking, a famous scientist who says about the theory of time travel, I say that it's a poor copy of what the Kala Chakra said, this theory says. Of course, there was a lot of controversy in 2018 when the then Science and Technology Minister Harshavardhan commented on this. Lots of so-called rational scientists had objected, and there was a big issue. Now, whether Stephen Hawking has commented about Veda or not, whether that comment is true or not, I would easily say that whatever the theory of the relative time, the theory of the relativity of time mentioned by Stephen Hawking is a poor copy of what the Indian philosophy would say.